Welcome to Secret Story. Sylvie, my mother-in-law, she booked her daughters, Tracy, my wife, and her sister Jane, in at a spa resort for a weekend break. Tracy and Jane left on Friday afternoon and were not expected back until Monday afternoon. This left us plenty of free time to have some fun. Jane was in on it and knew why her mother was sending Tracy and her away. She knew it was because Sylvie wanted my. When Tracy and Jane left, Tracy gave me instructions to keep an eye on her mother and help her if she needed anything. She suggested her mother move in with me, as we have spare bedrooms, so neither of us would be lonely. Sylvie arrived with Jane and her bags just before the sisters left for their mini break. Sylvie was dressed very casually to avoid looking suspicious and giving Tracy any concerns. Jane gave me a wink and whispered in my ear before they left. She said, "Have a good time with Mum, but save some of that for me." Sylvie and I enjoyed a nice home-cooked meal and a bottle of wine, then retired to the hot tub and listened to music while we soaked up the bubbles. Shortly after entering the tub I felt slightly lightheaded. I was not prepared for what happened next. Sylvie took a deep breath and then dove beneath the water. It was as though I had died and gone to heaven, and I knew I needed more. I waited a few seconds until Sylvie got her breath back, then pushed her back under the water. When she came up to the surface, I thought I would try it for myself and dove into the depths of the tub. We both agreed that hot tub was not for us, would have to wait until we got to the bedroom. For ages, after nothing was said, we just laid side by side, and both dozed off to sleep for about an hour. It was dark when we woke. We cleaned up, grabbed our robes, returned to the lounge, watched television, and opened a bottle or two of wine. She smiled at me, finished her wine, then led me to the bedroom by my moment that I will always remember. She looked up at me as me when my phone rang that we both jumped. I answered it, and straight away I recognized the voice. It was Tracy. Tracy said, "Are you okay? Sorry to call so late, but we have just gotten back from the nightclub." Tracy and I chatted. She was very drunk. I confirmed I was okay. I said, "Your mum is looking after me." If only she knew how well her mum was looking after me. This was a moment that Tracy could never find out about, as while we chatted, this time, she coughed and Tracy heard her. Tracy said, "Is Mum okay?" I said, "Yes, she is fine, she has her mouth full." The call ended shortly after Tracy accepted my reason for her mum choking. Sylvie and I cleaned up again, then slept through the morning. When I woke, Sylvie was gone, and she was not in the house. She had left me a note in the kitchen, which read, "Gone into town, see you later. I will get something for dinner." It was a lovely day, so I had a coffee, got the steam cleaning gear out, and started washing the cars. I only wore shorts and flip-flops because I knew I would get wet. That I was finishing off the second one when I heard the sound of stiletto heels approaching. I looked up, expecting to see Sylvie coming home, but was wrong. It was a beautiful, tall, slim blonde who looked to be about 18. This young lady, wearing a very short skirt, showing off a beautiful pair of long, slim legs and a white vest top, looked incredible. That I was expecting this young beauty to walk on past and could not take my eyes off her. That I had stopped cleaning, and my stare must have been so obvious. Then, to my surprise, she turned into my driveway and approached me in those high heels. She said, "Is Auntie Sylvie here?" I said, "She has gone into town and will be back later." She said, "Oh, she told me to meet her here, so I could share your hot tub with her. I have Prosecco." I could not take my eyes off this lady, who must have been Tracy's cousin, although I had never seen her before. Her strappy, high stiletto sandals showed off her small feet with perfectly manicured toes and bright red nails to match her fingernails. Her vest was tight. I said, "The hot tub is ready. You are welcome to use it and wait for her." She said, "I am Angie. Would you mind if I changed? It is so hot out here." Angie only had a small clutch bag. She pulled these lengths of what looked like string from her bag with tiny bits of cloth attached. I smiled and was excited at the thought of her wearing it. Angie looked at me and giggled but said nothing. That I finished my cleaning, then escorted her to the spare room, which had an ensuite, and left her to change. I headed to the master bedroom to shower and slip on my swimming trunks. That I left Angie with directions to get to the hot tub. Having removed the cover that I showered, then stepped out to dry off. Staring at me I said, "What are you doing?" "I'm waiting for you," she replied. "I thought we could go together." I made to cover but she said, "No point, I have already seen it." We grabbed some drinks, then, wrapped in towels, made our way down the garden to the secluded hot tub. We were in the tub, bubbles rising all around us, chatting, when Sylvia finally turned up. The pair hugged and kissed Sylvie, then went into the house. Returning 10 minutes later, she refilled our glasses, grabbed a large one, and eased herself into the tub. The ladies chatted about weird lady stuff, so I climbed out to prepare some lunch that I made us all ploumans with pork pies, salad, and pickles, and set up the patio table and more wine. The ladies exited the tub, and we all ate and drank a couple of bottles of wine. I spent a long time staring at them, switching my gaze between them and Sylvia's. Eventually, I decided to sit between them. Sylvia smiled at her and said, "You will never find a better specimen, and he knows how to use it." Angie declared, "I will be the judge of that." With a broad smile on her face that I grinned back at her, stood up, and turned to face her. I looked at Sylvie, who smiled and said, "How good is she?" I said, "Wonderful." I was spent, so I sat back down between the ladies once again. Angie said, "I need you to recover soon." I suggested we get cleaned up, move inside, and see what happens. The ladies agreed. We all showered, slipped on bathrobes, and sat in the lounge drinking wine and chatting. It wasn't long before Angie slid in beside me on my sofa and slipped a hand on my thigh. To my surprise, Sylvie just sat and watched from the other sofa. She was still wrapped in her robe. Angie slipped off the sofa onto the floor. This was so good she stopped short of that and demanded we change places. I turned her around, we swapped places again. Sylvie looked up, a bit shocked, then said, "I want the same treatment later, okay?" I just nodded, too exhausted to say anything. Angie had to leave that evening because her boyfriend was expecting her home. Sylvie and I just relaxed and didn't actually have any more go that evening. We made up for it the following morning, though, and over the rest of the weekend before Tracy and Jane returned. Welcome to Secret Story. I had a job and worked every day after school. I had more money than most of my friends, and rode a new motorcycle. I liked girls and spent more time with them than I did hanging out with my guy friends. I enjoyed their company and almost always had some girl with me. I liked to open doors for them and tell them they were beautiful. I bought them flowers for no reason and took them out on dates. At 18, I had long hair, rode a nice motorcycle, and had girls around me all the time. I was a young rebel. I thought I knew all about girls, and what they liked. Then one summer day my dad's sister, Aunt Madeline, came to visit. She was very good looking and fun to be around. It seemed she was always laughing. Aunt Madeline and Dawn, a friend who came with her, had made the 9-hour drive from Arizona. They visited with my mom and dad until 10 or so. They were tired from the long drive and ready to hit the sack. It was Saturday and a warm summer night. The moon was full. I decided to go for a bike ride and see if I could find some friends to hang out with for a while. I was headed out the door when my aunt walked back into the living room. "Where you headed?" she asked. "I'm going out to play for a bit." I answered, "Oh, my neck is so tired from the drive. I was hoping you would massage it a little, maybe I could sleep better." I didn't think anything of it, and agreed to rub Aunt Madeline's neck. She pulled a quilt from the back of the sofa and spread it on the floor. She laid face down and stretched her arms out, took a deep breath and exhaled. I straddled her back and started rubbing her shoulders. I slowly moved up and worked on her neck. Aunt Madeline took another deep breath and exhaled. She seemed to be relaxing. "Is that enough?" I asked her. "I could lay here all night," she said, "but I guess that will do." I lifted my leg and moved to the side. She put her hands under her head and pulled her knees up under herself. I thought, I gotta go. "So, where are you going?" she asked. "Just for a ride. It's really nice out tonight and I just feel like going for a ride." She looked at me and smiled. "Do you want to go?" I asked her. "Yes," she said. I thought to myself, I was just being nice. Now I am sure to run into some friends, with an older woman on the back of my bike. Madeline went to put on some cloths, and I went outside to smoke a cigarette. A few minutes later she came out. We climbed on the bike, Auntie Madeline put her arms around me and hung on as we pulled out of the driveway. I decided to take the interstate and go south to the next town. It was about 10 miles, then we could come back on the old road. It was about 25 miles round trip. I hit the on-ramp and headed south. It was warm and I decided to just enjoy the ride. We were only a couple of miles out of town, it was quiet and there was no traffic. Aunt Madeline dropped her hand to my mind went blank. I didn't know what the. I still didn't know what to think, but at the same time, it felt so good. She leaned forward, I slowed down to about 40 miles an hour, I wanted this to last. We were coming into town, the interstate turned into a two-way highway with 2 lanes on each side that went through town. There was traffic and street lights. I told her, we should turn around and go back the same way we came. No, she said, keep going, it will be fun. She laughed and told me, I'll hide it if we needed to. We cruised through town. One of the stop lights turned red and I had to stop. I looked in the mirror and noticed a car coming up from behind. The car pulled up beside us and stopped. Aunt Madeline covered it up with the other. I looked over at the car, and saw 4 girls. They looked like high school girls out partying. I looked in the mirror and could see Aunt Madeline was looking at the girls too. I looked back at the car and noticed a girl in the back seat was looking at us. Aunt Madeline moved her hand. The light turned green, I let the clutch out and pulled. Ahead of the car, I laughed and turned to look at Aunt Madeline. What the are you doing? I asked. She laughed and said, that was funny. I looked in the mirror and noticed the car was trying to keep up with us. The next light turned red just before we got to it. I had to stop again. I dropped my left hand and covered my hard-on. The car pulled up beside us. Now the girls were hanging out of the windows, and all of them were looking. I saw the light on the side turn yellow and knew mine was about to turn green. The first reached up and pulled the clutch in and put the bike in gear. I could hear Aunt Madeline laughing. I made the last light before it turned red and headed out of town. What the, you're crazy. I told her. You're driving me crazy. I told her. She laughed. I know, was all she said. The house was dark. We climbed off the bike. Aunt Madeline put her arms around me and kissed me. Thanks for the ride, it was fun. I sat on the porch and fired up a cigarette. A few minutes later she came back out. She laughed. I'm going to have fun with you, she said. I finished my cigarette, and we went in the house. It was dark and quiet. I was going to sleep on the sofa. I had offered my aunt's friend Dawn my bed. Aunt Madeline was in my brother's room. Mom had made me nice comfortable bed on the sofa with my favorite blanket and pillow. I wished Aunt Madeline would have given me before we got there, but she didn't. She just teased me the whole trip. Aunt Madeline headed toward the bedroom she was staying in. I could not stop thinking about what had just happened. I thought about her laughing as she held it up for the girls to see. She was nuts, it made me laugh. I heard something. I opened my eyes. Aunt Madeline was standing beside the sofa. She kneeled beside me and whispered in my ear, I want to taste. I was nervous and worried my mom or dad would come in and turn on the light. What are you doing? I asked her. She whispered in my ear, be quiet. She said you better be quiet and don't wake anybody up. With everything that had happened in the last hour, I knew I could not last. My breathing slowed and I stopped shaking. She raised up and moved back up. She kissed me and said, good night. Sleep well. She got up, put the blanket back on me and left. I woke up the next morning to the sound of dishes rattling and the smell of bacon. I got up and headed for the shower. I showered and shaved. I walked into the kitchen. Aunt Madeline and her friend Dawn were sitting at the table. Mom was cooking and my father was reading the newspaper. I looked at Madeline. She smiled. Good morning, sunshine, she said. Good morning, I replied. I noticed Dawn was looking up and down me. She smiled and said, good morning. They looked at each other and smiled. I wondered if Madeline had told her. After breakfast they all were going to visit my Uncle John. He lived about an hour away, so I knew they would be gone most of the day. My dad told me to mow the lawn and pick my mess in the garage. I was mowing when they left. I finished the lawn and pushed the mower back into the garage, picked up the tools and cleaned the garage. I had put tuned exhaust pipes on my bike a couple of days earlier. then went for a ride and left the mess. It was about noon, I was making a sandwich when the doorbell rang. I opened the door. It was Carol and some other girl. Carol and I had gone out a couple of times. She was a fun girl and a good friend. We sat on the porch and chatted. Carol's friend's name was Donna. She had a good sense of humor, and made us laugh. Carol looked at me. "I saw you last night," she said. "Oh," I replied. "Where?" "At the stop-light," she said. "I was in the back seat of the car at the light." She smiled. It was all the girls could talk about all night. I smiled and laughed. What can I say? "Who was the woman?" Carol asked. "Just a friend." I told her. Carol told me they were going to the river. She said there was a party and asked if I wanted to go. "Yeah, sounds like fun, but I will take my bike in case I decide to leave." Carol asked if she could ride with me and Donna could take her car. "Sure," I said. Donna said she would see us there. She got in the car and left. Carol and I climbed on the bike and pulled out of the driveway. We were no more than half a mile down the road when Carol put her hand on my. She leaned forward and told me. "That was so hot last night. Can we just go somewhere?" she said. "Where do you want to go?" I asked. She said we could go to her house. Her mom and dad had gone to some church thing and would not be back until tomorrow. I turned the bike around and went to her house. It didn't take long before we headed to the river. There was not much going on at the party. I stayed for about an hour, then left Carol there with Donna. I rode into town and got a burger and Coke, then headed home. I pulled into the driveway. Aunt Madeline and Donna were loading their bags into the trunk of their car. I asked if they were leaving. Madeline told me her husband, Uncle Ken, had called and the company he worked for had asked him to go to Boston for a few weeks to help with a job there. She said she had to cut her trip short and get home. They had a dog and were having a deck and hot tub added on to the back of their house. She hugged me and said, "I had a good time last night, thanks." Donna smiled at me and waved as they drove off. I was sad to see them go so soon. The next 2 days I could not think of anything other than the way Aunt Madeline. A few days later my mom told me that my Aunt Madeline had called. She asked if you would like to stay with her until your Uncle Ken gets home. She wants to do some landscaping in her yard and could use some help. And would enjoy your company. I made the 9-hour trip in less than 8 hours. I only stopped to eat and get gas. I thought about her the whole way. I parked in front of her garage door and pulled my bags off the bike. The garage door opened. Aunt Madeline smiled. "Well, that was a fast trip. You can put your bike in the garage if you want." I pushed it in and she shut the door. She gave me a hug and asked if I was hungry. We went into the kitchen. Donna was sitting at the kitchen table. We visited while Madeline made me a sandwich. Auntie handed me a cold bottle of beer to go with it and asked Donna if she wanted one. We took our beer and went out the back door to see the new deck and hot tub. It was a nice backyard with a tall fence and big trees. It was very private. We drank a few beers on the deck. Donna suggested that we all get in the new hot tub and relax. I looked at Madeline. She stood up and she whispered in my ear, "If you do as you're told, without question, we will teach you how to please any. I promise you will never forget your stay here as long as you live, but if you don't do as you're told you will have to go home early. Do you understand?" "Yes," I answered. Soon my breathing slowed. I opened my eyes and looked at Madeline. "I told you not to do that," she said. She raised up. "Open your mouth," she demanded the two of them. They took turns every night. Aunt Madeline and Donna. 2 days before I left, Uncle Ken came home. It was about noon when we picked him up at the airport. Aunt Madeline and Dawn both hugged him. "I hear you have been taking good care of my girls while I was gone," he said, as he smiled and shook my hand. We all went to a nice restaurant and had lunch. "Today is Dawn's birthday," Aunt Madeline said. "I think we should all give her something special." We drank a few beers and had a good visit. We all went back to their house and had a few more beers while we all enjoyed the hot tub. "What would you like for your birthday?" I asked Dawn. "Oh, let's see, I would like a good massage." We all laughed. "You got it," Uncle Ken told her. "I can do it for hours." and I always do it until they ask me to stop. They always come back for more and I'm always glad to see them. Tob continued. Story 2, Welcome to Secret Story. My first name is Rochelle, but my students call me Madame Anderson. I only teach French 3 days a week and occasionally substitute for the English department. My family is quite well off, and we don't need to work, but I enjoy helping young minds develop and blossom. My husband, Gerald, used to be a history professor and volunteers as an archivist at a museum to occupy his time. He loves ships and the ocean but jokes that I get seasick looking at a fishbowl. It's not far from the truth. I'm a good swimmer, but even going in the deep end of our backyard pool makes me a little uncomfortable. I was confident he hadn't cheated yet, but there were signs he was tempted. I often noticed him looking at other women. Most of them were younger and blonder women. I usually wanted to 2 or 3 times a week, but lately, we were down to once, usually on Tuesday night. He started bringing his tablet to the bathroom with him. I knew I had to do something when he bought an expensive new sports car and started working out at a gym. We'd been married 17 years and I still loved him. I also knew our son Jonathan would be devastated if his father and I ever separated. I figured that if I gave Gerald somebody pretty but underwhelming intellectually, he'd be satisfied in bed but still need me as a companion and partner. I planned to make a deal with him. Our handsome and muscular gardener Antonio had lost his wife recently. I'd noticed him glancing at my body while I lay by the pool and he worked in the backyard. If I could get private time with him occasionally, I'd be fine with my husband having some extramarital fun too. It was nearly 2 on a Saturday afternoon. I sat at a table outside a restaurant, watching some birds in the park nearby as I took small sips of my coffee. I was disappointed to see her puffing on a cigarette as she approached. A few steps from me, she crushed it out with one of her dangerously high black heels. She had on even more makeup than usual. With her long blonde hair, hourglass figure, and pretty blue eyes, she didn't need it. I was sure she got even more male attention than she wanted. "Hi, Mrs. Anderson." "Hello, Chloe." A young waiter hurried over as she sat. He smiled as he asked her, "What will you have to drink? Would you like a menu?" I was slightly jealous since he'd made me wait a few minutes when I got there. "Coffee with sugar and lots of cream." I could see him start to blush when she mentioned lots of cream. He gulped and said, "I'll be right back." As she took her first sip I said, "I have your record right here, Chloe. Please let me know if any of this is in error. You have been held back a grade twice. You are only a high school junior and just turned 19. Your 17-year-old sister is a year ahead of you. You'll graduate when you're 21, if you're lucky. Is that right?" I thought keeping her in school any longer would just be a waste of resources. She squirmed in her seat. "Well, yeah, but I don't have the marks for your other classes handy, but in French and English, your average grades are a D and a C-. You've been disciplined a total of 5 times for inappropriate wardrobe and smoking on school grounds. The last time wasn't my fault. You also come from a single-parent household and have 4 siblings your mother can barely support. Correct?" She was nearly in tears. I'm not out to cause problems or hurt your feelings. I want to help you. I know of a job that might be perfect for you." "A job? You won't need a diploma or good grades. Housing, meals, clothing, and so on will be provided for you. How does that sound so far?" "But, I don't think I want to go in the army. I don't know much about guns and I'm not brave or anything." I chuckled. "No, it's much better than joining the army. You must have a lot of experience housekeeping, right?" "Yeah, with a baby brother and 3 little sisters. I can cook, do laundry, and wash dishes, and stuff." "Good. I'll give you the particulars after lunch. Let's look at our menus and order, my treat." I saw a mouth-watering picture of a steak sandwich but behaved myself and ordered a chef salad. She made me jealous again by ordering a bacon cheeseburger, fries, and cherry pie for dessert. It felt quite unfair she had a great body but ate high-calorie crap like that. I needed to choose meals carefully and work out 3 times a week. Halfway through lunch, she lit a cigarette and some of the smoke blew in my face. My husband and I had quit smoking long ago. It stung my eyes a little, but I liked the smell in an odd way and had a mild craving. After lunch, I led her to a room at the hotel across the street. I sat in the desk chair and motioned toward the bed that I told her, "Before I can give you details about the job, I have to be sure you're the right girl. I need the money, but my husband will be the only one who sees the video. I'll delete it once he watches." How about 500? She nervously agreed. Okay. I commented, "Nice, very nice indeed. Move your hands so I can get some close-ups. Turn around slowly." Her skin was totally smooth, with no tattoos or wrinkles anywhere. She would have been more attractive without the excessive makeup, but her face was still pretty. That I told her, "Good, Chloe. Now lie down and Jill off." She climbed on the bed. "I'm so embarrassed. Could you look away, please?" "All right." I leaned my phone on the desk lamp and checked that it was pointing toward her. I was surprised to feel a little aroused myself. As she dressed, she asked, "So what's the job? If my mom ever found out." "If you accept the housekeeper job I'm offering, your main duties will include cleaning, making meals, and keeping an eye on my son. Sometimes you'll sleep with Gerald, a very nice but older man. You won't be allowed to have other boyfriends. You'll drop out of school Monday morning and move into my guest house. If you..." She interrupted, "Older like a little older, or like ugly and really old?" I held up my phone and showed her 6 pictures. "Here he is. Well, he's pretty old but still kind of handsome." She'd irritated me yet again. "Gerald was a month younger than I. If you'll do it for a whole year, you and your mother will get new cars. I'll also pay off the mortgage on her house if you keep him happy 5 years. You'll get free room and board, a salary of $3,000 a month, plus I'll send your mother $2,000 a month to help her out. Your portion could increase up to $8,000 monthly depending on how happy my husband is with your..." I looked toward her crotch. "Performance. Agreed? Wow. So. $5,000 a month. And maybe 10. I nodded and had a snarky thought. It took her a while, but at least she can add 2 plus 3 and 2 plus 8 without using her fingers. She continued, "That's a lot. The job is being a housekeeper and What, exactly?" She was quite a dim bulb, so I made it even more clear for her. "Chloe, I want you to seduce my husband." When Chloe moved in Monday afternoon, my son Jonathan was at a friend's house down the street and Gerald was at the museum. Instead of using a moving van, a friend dropped her off in our driveway. She was only carrying a backpack and 1 suitcase. I felt sorry for her. I'd hate to be poor and have so little. "Hi, Mrs. Anderson." I said. "Hello again, Chloe. Since I'm not your teacher anymore, you can call me Rochelle. Follow me to the guest house and I'll show you around." I led her in and pointed out the rooms. "The kitchen is over there. The living room has an electric fireplace. There's a tub and shower in the upstairs bathroom, but the downstairs one only has a toilet and sink. I'd suggest you use one of the bedrooms to sleep in most of the time and keep the other nice for when Gerald is here." Holy cow. This is nearly as big as my mom's whole house. I don't have to share it with anybody. She set her suitcase and backpack down. That I felt slightly jealous and started to reconsider my plan. As I said, "Just my husband sometimes. If I needed to let him sleep with her so he would stay, I'd do it, but that didn't mean I'd enjoy it. You can use the pool in the backyard, and the hot tub and rec room in the main house basement. There are pool and ping pong tables over there. You can do your laundry over there too." She asked, "Where can I have a cigarette?" She followed me outside as I said, I don't want you smoking indoors or around my son. I guess if the weather's bad you can smoke in the garage, but not in the house or guest house. Okay. Since we're way across town, I think I'll miss my family. Can I get time off to go see them? Sure. If the house is clean, you only need to be here when Jonathan is home. You can go shopping, visit your family, or whatever when he's in school, or days when I'm off work. Your family can come visit on the weekends. That's nice. They would have a blast swimming in your pool. I think one of your sisters is in the same grade as Jonathan. Right? Yeah, Laura is 16. She mentioned him being cute. I think she likes him. I smiled that I got an old flower pot from the shed and handed it to her. Use this as an ashtray for the time being. I'll get some the next time I go shopping. We sat at the picnic table in front of the guest house. She lit up and took a puff as I said, I have some personal questions for you, since you'll be intimate with my husband. Yeah. I was wondering, should I ask him to sleep with me when he gets home? No. You need to be subtle. He has to think it's his idea. He'll need to get acquainted with you first. I don't think Gerald will approach you for at least a week. Just keep the house clean and let me know privately when he starts flirting with you. But I still get paid, right? Language. I don't want you using words like that. My son shouldn't hear it, and my husband won't like it if you use vulgar language. Sorry. I'll pay you every other weekend, starting in about 2 weeks. Here's a little to tide you over until then. I handed her some cash. Thanks. I need to know some things about you, like what birth control you're on, most of the time. Or every time. I'm probably fine. Probably. I'll get you an appointment at the clinic. The birth control implant is simple, and it'll keep you from getting pregnant for a couple of years. You need to be checked for diseases, too, yeah. I did hand jobs for the 3 guys before him. But I didn't give up the goods until my last boyfriend. He said he wanted to marry me. He got all angry and broke up with me when he saw his cousin kiss me, though. You cheated with his cousin? No. I just kissed her. It's not like I sleep around a lot. She started it. So, you like girls too, Chloe? Some are really pretty, but that was the only time I kissed one. I tried it with a girl once, a long time ago. I understand. Our eyes locked for a few seconds, then we smiled and giggled nervously. She turned away as I asked, do you have any medical problems the family should know about, diabetes, allergies, or anything? No. That's good. How much do you smoke? When I was in school, I could only get away with 3 a day, sometimes 4. Maybe 6 or 7 on weekends. It's unhealthy, but about 5 a day isn't that bad. My husband and I used to smoke in high school, so I know how hard it is to quit. I'll help, if you want. Maybe later. Once I get comfortable here. Sure. I hope you like animals. Big dogs kind of scare me, but most animals are okay. That's good. Jonathan has a hamster, a turtle, and a lizard. He wants to be a vet. Does he need to go in the military? That's where vets come from, right? I bit my lip a moment to avoid laughing, then patiently explained the difference between veteran and veterinarian as I finished giving Chloe a tour of the house. My son came home. I introduced them. Jonathan, this is Chloe. She's going to be our new housekeeper. When your father and I are away, she's in charge. Do what she says. He asked, your little sister is Laura, right? She kinda looks like you. Not as grown up, though. I saw he was staring at the shape of one of Chloe's nipples as it pushed against her thin bikini top. She nodded. She's one of my 3 sisters. I think you're in the same grade. Yeah. We're in most of the same classes. That reminds me, I need to do my homework. As he ran upstairs, the bulge in his jeans told me homework was the last thing on his mind. That I told her, Gerald might be offended if you look too sleazy. And I don't really want my son seeing you like this. It's too distracting. I don't really have anything like that, except my winter clothes in the attic at home. I sighed. Let's go look in my closet. I think I have some things in your size. I knew I had several dresses that would fit her, but they were from 10 years and 15 pounds ago. She dropped her running shorts and tried on half a dozen dresses in my bedroom. She pointed to a cardboard box of random old things on the closet floor. What's that? Is that real gold? I looked in the box. Yes, it's a gold-plated cigarette holder. Gerald gave it to me for my 18th birthday, along with that gold-plated lighter. We quit smoking about 17 years ago. When I got pregnant with Jonathan. She stared at them a little while and I told her, I guess you can have them, since I don't smoke anymore. Really? Thanks. She put the holder in the corner of her mouth, then held it and waved it around like a wand. Does this look sexy? I smiled. That's why Gerald gave it to me. Let's get back to finding a dress you like. Gerald walked into the bedroom as she dropped her current dress to the floor. She shrieked, "Ia!" She grabbed the dress and held it in front of her as I tried to explain, Gerald, this is our new housekeeper, Chloe. He turned and walked out quickly. That I followed him and said, Chloe is from a poor family, and I was giving her some of my old clothes. His face was a little red and I saw one of his hands was clenched in a fist until he took a deep breath. He paused a moment then turned around. It's nice you're helping her out. That was quite a surprise. Sorry, I should have locked the door. It's all right. Do we have plans for dinner? I'm famished. He smelled like soap and his dark hair was damp. He had taken a shower recently. I saw his gym duffel bag in the hall. I'll help Chloe make something once she finds a dress she likes. I hope you had a good day. I was sorting old photos of sailing ships in the museum basement most of the day. It was nice. I'll grab a snack and help Jonathan with his homework. Let us know when dinner is ready. Sure. The three of us made small talk through dinner, then watched a movie with my son. After Jonathan went to bed, I suggested, Gerald, maybe you could help Chloe unpack. You could get to know her a little. She rested a hand on his arm. Would you please? He said, okay. Have you thought about what classes you want to take in college, Chloe? I giggled quietly as they walked out the back door, knowing that would be an interesting conversation. I looked out the window and saw them sitting at the picnic table. Chloe was smoking with the holder, and his attention was firmly focused on her mouth. I smiled, knowing my plan was going well so far. I knew that with his great mind, he'd quickly tire of conversations with an airhead like her. He'd still need me as a partner and companion, Chloe's point of view. As I put a menthol 120 in the holder Mrs. Anderson gave me, I answered him. Jerry, I'm fine with the job. I don't like to read, and I hate math. Why do I need more school? I saw he was staring at my lips as I lit up and took a puff. I had to suck harder than usual to get much smoke, so my cheeks moved in more. I could tell from the look on his face he liked that. He said, I guess you have a point, if you're actually happy. I just started, but I think I'll like it. She said I only need to cook, keep the house clean, watch John, and Slee. I froze a second. I'd nearly given away the secret. And some other stuff. You're a lot more handsome than the pictures she showed me. You look much nicer than our last housekeeper, too. She was 50-something and shaped like an apple. I laughed and asked, she said my family can visit and use the pool. They're welcome anytime. Have fun with them in the pool, rec room, whatever. Our home is your home. That's so nice of you. Thanks. He asked, how much are we paying you? $3,000 a month, and more when you, I froze. I'd almost given away the secret again. And? He looked at my mouth as I sucked in another big puff, giving me time to think a little. And more if your family is happy with me. If you do a good job, that's fair. I took a last puff and put the cigarette out. I said, that was a really embarrassing way to meet you. I'm glad your family is so nice. Come in and help me unpack. I held his hand and led him into the guest house, my new home. I could hardly believe I'd have such a big place all to myself. I moved the shirts and shorts from my suitcase to the dresser drawers. By the end, I saw him sweating a little and there was a lump in the front of his pants. I thought I should try seducing him and gave it a go. That I faked a yawn and said, my mom would always kiss me goodnight. Would you give me a goodnight kiss? I was disappointed when he kissed my forehead. Good night, Chloe. I was horny and a little sad, but hopeful that I'd get him the next day. He was really smart and kind of hot for an old guy. Gerald's POV, the few hours since I got home were arousing but quite confusing. For a few seconds, I thought I'd caught Rochelle cheating on me with a woman, but her explanation that Chloe had been trying on clothes made sense. Rochelle was fully dressed and there were clothes scattered all over the room. That I wondered why she encouraged me to help Chloe unpack. It would give me time alone with a very attractive woman I'd just met. I was over twice her age. I was probably in college when she was born. Rochelle had been staring out the window both times. She'd probably seen Chloe holding my hand and me kissing her brow instead of her questioning me when I returned to the house or acting jealous. She smiled and asked if I would wash her back in the shower. In my excited state, I was happy to play along. That I imagined Chloe in the girl I had a crush on, Emily, and was soon close to climax. Rochelle moved away and reminded me, shower. So good, Gerald. That was amazing. You too. That was great. After toweling each other off, we climbed into bed. It was the best night we'd had in months. That I was kept awake by some nagging thoughts in the back of my mind. I wondered why my wife would show the new housekeeper pictures of me, why Chloe was trying to seduce me, and why Rochelle didn't seem to mind. I thought about it for quite a while. I wasn't sure what Chloe and my wife were up to, or what I should do about it. That I also wondered if my crush on Emily would lead to anything. I thought if I decided on Emily, a few more weeks at the gym would get me in decent enough shape that she'd go on a date with me. Taking her somewhere in my new Ferrari would greatly improve my chances. Too. My wife Rochelle shut off the 6:15 alarm and started getting dressed. She reminded me, I'm taking Jonathan to a soccer game after school. We should be home around 6. I sleepily mumbled, okay. Have a nice day. You too, Gerald. See you tonight. I volunteered at the museum and didn't have a set schedule. I usually left home around 8:30 a.m. I pulled the sheet over my face to block the early morning sun and pondered my situation. I'd met Emily when I stopped at an antique shop near the museum 2 months ago. I glanced at the young and attractive redhead several times as I browsed the interesting items. I was quite surprised to see a cannon monkey leaned against the wall. Sometimes they were called ball monkeys instead. The large and heavy square plate of brass had 25 hollows bored into it at even intervals, to keep cannonballs in place on the gun deck of a sailing ship. More cannonballs would be stacked on top, forming a pyramid that I thought it would make an excellent conversation piece in my basement rec room, or a nice decoration for the back patio. I looked at the price and was quite surprised. The person running the shop knew how rare they were and what it was worth. Emily saw me looking it over quite a while and walked near me. She asked, do you know what it is? Yes, it's a cannon monkey. I like it, but the price is a bit steep. She said, my grandfather tells a story about a ship sailing in the far north carrying some Arctic explorers, Fred Cook's expedition, I think. In the cold, the brass monkey and the iron cannonballs shrank at different rates. When it got down to 35 below, a stack of cannonballs came loose and scattered all over the deck. They discovered 35 below is, I'd heard the story before and finished it with her, cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey. Ha 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 ha. She blushed as she laughed, and I thought she was terribly cute. She told me she was a literature major, planning on a minor in history. She worked at her grandparents' antique shop when she had time between classes, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons that I bought the cannon monkey and returned to the shop on Tuesday afternoons to browse and chat with her. I loved my wife Rochelle and thought I'd never cheat, but Emily was amusing and quite tempting. I was hopeful but thought it unlikely she'd be into my secret fetish, female domination. I started getting hard again as I thought about it that I knew my wife Rochelle loved me, and she'd given me a son, but as she aged she was losing her visual appeal. Her only hint of dominance was, don't forget to put your dirty clothes in the laundry basket. In bed, most of the time she just lays there. Other than our Chloe-inspired shower, most of the excitement was gone. Without a doubt, Chloe has an excellent body and pretty face. She's a nice girl but talks with her seem to quickly descend into the land of beer parties and fart jokes. She doesn't have the knowledge or mentality to follow most of my best stories. I usually visited Emily at the antique shop on Tuesdays, but the next day was Thursday and I knew she'd be working. I debated whether I should bring her flowers or another small gift and invite her on a date. If it went well, I could make up some conference or meeting out of town as an excuse to be away. I suddenly remembered my wedding anniversary was on the coming Saturday. I was losing interest in my wife, but wasn't going to be a total jackass and cheat on our anniversary. I still cared for her, and she didn't deserve that. Instead of visiting Emily, on Thursday I'd go to a jewelry store and buy some earrings for my wife. After a bit more sleep, I saw the clock showing 8:03 and decided it was time for breakfast. Chloe, I woke up at 6 a.m. to make them breakfast. After Mrs. Anderson and her son left for school, I decided to get some more sleep before cleaning up the house. I was finally starting to doze off when I heard a car door close and looked out the window. I saw Jerry sitting in his hot red convertible. He revved the engine a couple times and the sound was high-pitched, not like most cars. I liked it a lot. I thought he looked handsome in his suit as he backed out and drove away. That I laid down for a few more minutes and heard an awful racket. The gardener was trying to start the lawn mower. It would go for maybe 10 seconds then quit. The noise was annoying, but I thought his dark tan and big arms were kind of hot. Most guys look gross that way. I was feeling great and almost there when he got the mower to work. He drove it out of sight and started mowing the front lawn, where I couldn't see him. Dang it. It was obvious why Mrs. Anderson liked him. That I got dressed, then thought about what I should do to make Jerry like me as I cleaned up the kitchen. Letting him stare at my mouth when I smoked didn't work either. Most guys would have been all over me. She had told me he didn't like women dressing sleazy, but that didn't make any sense. Guys love that. For a second I wondered if maybe he was gay, but he had a kid with his wife. I wondered if asking him to put sunscreen on me would work. That was how I got my last boyfriend. I figured it was worth a try. Gerald, as I got home from the museum, Chloe was walking out to the pool. She waved and shouted, "Can you help me a minute?" She sat on a lounger and held up a bottle of sunscreen as I got there. "I can't reach my back. Would you put some on, so I don't burn?" Rochelle and Jonathan wouldn't be home for hours. It was an obvious ploy to get me excited, but I knew I could control myself. I decided to have a little fun and feel part of her beautiful body. "I don't mind. Sunburns can be painful and lead to skin cancer or other problems. We don't want that." She smiled and said, "Don't want a string in the way." I poured some more sunscreen into my hand and took my time finishing her back. I enjoyed feeling her smooth warm skin. She sputtered a moment. "But. Thanks." She was clearly disappointed as I walked in the house. "Rochelle, Chloe met me at the front door and said, we need to talk." I followed her out to the guest house. I keep trying so hard, but he still doesn't like me. What can I do? She had tears forming at the corners of her eyes. When I do sexy stuff, most guys are like lions looking at raw meat. No matter what I try, he doesn't like me. I hugged her and patted her back gently. He likes you, Chloe. He really does. He just needs to get to know you first. You've only been here 2 days. You don't need to screw him tonight or tomorrow. Another week or 2 is fine. Take it easy. She sniffled. Thanks. I'm glad you're so nice to me. I just don't know what I'm going to do. I had a sneaky idea. If you find his tablet and he's not around, check what websites he's been going to. I think if you see what kind of movies he's been watching, it will give you some ideas. If he watched Mission Impossible or Spider-Man. How does that help me? She seemed shocked. He's a nice guy. I don't think he would watch that stuff. You're so sweet and naive. Take your time and he'll come around. Go fix your makeup before dinner. On our 18th anniversary a few days later, Gerald got a cake and gave me a pair of earrings. We had a little party with the family after dinner. I had no doubt the large diamonds in the earrings had cost quite a bit, but he didn't do anything that was actually romantic. He didn't take me anywhere and didn't even get flowers or champagne. When he got in bed, I rolled away and silently cried myself to sleep. Chloe, I'd been the family's housekeeper for 4 days. Like Mrs. Anderson had said. I grabbed Jerry's tablet when everybody was away from home. I looked up the instructions on a website, and copied his internet history to my phone. I put the tablet back and smiled, knowing I'd done something right. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. No part of this story can be reproduced in any form or by any electronic or mechanical means without written permission from the author. All characters are fictitious, and any similarity to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental unless otherwise stated. Dear friends, thank you very much for watching. Leave comments, put likes, share with friends and subscribe to the channel.